So I was on the roof of a house in Shiprock, New Mexico, and it was hot. It was my first trip to the Southwest. I was so excited to be on the Navajo Indian Reservation for the very first time. I was working with a team of young people and adults to re-roof a house. Let's just say I was working away, and all of a sudden, I felt dizzy. Now, I wasn't even sweating, so I was thinking, what's going on here? And well, thanks to a wise Indian man, I took a break and drank some water. You see, I learned that day something about the southwestern United States that some of you know about, and that is where the humidity is low, you may be thirsty and not even know it. Your perspiration evaporates so quickly that you do not even realize you're becoming dehydrated. So whether you feel thirsty or not, you drink a little water as often as you can. Now, in the Grand Canyon National Park, there are signs that are strategically placed along the trails that remind you to stop and drink water. Stop, drink water. You are thirsty whether you realize you are or not. Now, the first two texts that you heard read this morning from the scriptures, the first one, the prophet Isaiah cries out. He says, "Ho, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And you that have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money or price." My kind of place. But then a little later the prophet says, "Seek the Lord while the Lord may be found. Call upon the Lord while the Lord is near." So what is it then that's on this heavenly menu? God and justice. He goes on to say, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways." Are we thirsty and we just don't know it? Now, have you ever been to visit with someone? I know this happens more probably in the South than it does in the North. But have you ever been to visit with someone and as soon as you arrive, they ask you, "Do you want something to drink?" In this passage, you might say that Isaiah leans across the coffee table and says, "Hey, stop it. Whether or not you're hungry or thirsty, you need what God has to give. Listen," he says, "so that you may live." So what's on the menu? The psalmist spells it out even more for us. When the psalmist says, "Oh God, you are my God. I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you, as in a dry and weary land where there is no water." So maybe we really are thirsty and just don't know what it is that we're thirsty for. And one day, Jesus came to a party. It was one of those high festivals of sorts. And it says, on the last and greatest day of the feast, Jesus stood and said in a loud voice, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, streams of living water will flow from within." Now, wait a minute. These folks had been partying for weeks. They had been drinking for weeks, celebrating. Did Jesus know something that they did not know? Were they thirsty and they didn't even know it? Are you getting thirsty yet? Now, at first glance, from the text that we heard read from the Gospel of Luke, the text has absolutely nothing to do with thirst and hunger. Jesus comes upon these people and they're having this conversation. The atrocity of the Galileans. And everyone wanted to blame everyone else for the ills of the world. And amidst all this blaming, Jesus tells them a story. Jesus just had a way of kind of telling the most interesting little stories at the most interesting times. But right in the middle of their moral high horse, he says, think about a homely old fig tree, one that has not borne much fruit for a long time. Well, the farm owner says, cut that darn tree down. But his head gardener says, first, let's give this tree one more chance. Let me aerate the soil around it and throw some manure on the poor thing. After that, give the tree one more year. And if it does not produce, chop it to the ground. So right when we're all hyped up, especially during this election season, where we're ready to wipe the face of evil from the face of the earth, Jesus knocks us back down to earth and back to ourselves with talk of fertilizer and a scruffy tree. Kind of reminding us that this Lenten season, that we're like the fig tree. Are we bearing fruit, or are we just taking up space? Now, why does Jesus join with the prophet and the psalmist and go ruin the whole menu? Back to the psalmist. That dry and weary land where there's no water may just be us. It may be our world that we live in. We may just be filling ourselves with lots of stuff that really does not matter at all. Are we thirsty and we don't even know it? Yes, Lord, the prophet has it right. My ways are not God's ways. I hear that in my ears so many times. In my heart, my ways are not God's ways. And yet I too find myself at the end of the long party, as it says, at the end of trying to rid the world of evil, on my high horse, awfully thirsty for something more, a longing. Do you have it? Or is it just me? I think it was St. Augustine that said, you move us to delight in praising you, O Lord, for you have formed us for yourself, and our hearts are restless till they find rest in you. Seek the Lord while the Lord may be found. Call upon the Lord while the Lord is near. O God, you are my God. I seek you. My soul thirsts for you, as in a dry and weary land where there is no water. Yes, Lord, remind me. Remind us this Lenten season to dig around our tree, to put some manure on it so that our old trees might bear some fruit. I am thirsty, Lord, and you are my living water. So rearrange me so that I, like the psalmist, might cry out in the tone of contentment at the end of the psalm when he said, my soul is satisfied as with a rich feast, and my mouth praises you with joyful lips. My soul clings to you. So come, everyone who is thirsty, come to the waters, and we, our church, our mission, our individuals, will make sure that even if you have no money, as the prophet says, you can still come and buy and eat. You can come and buy wine and milk without money or price, because this is God's kingdom we're talking about, where all people are welcome, no matter who they are, no matter where they are on life's journey. We all have something in common, don't we? We're thirsty, and we really do know it. So we come, as one has come to the baptismal waters today, we come reminding ourselves of God's grace available freely for us, this unconditional love. that overwhelms. We come to drink from the well. Let us this Lenten season be good drinkers. Amen. And we continue our worship